You're listening to the Psychic Dream Journey podcast with your host, author, and psychic dreamer, Kim Treffinger.
My guest today is Dr. Kelly Bulkeley. He's the director of the Sleep and Dream Database. He's a researcher, author, and past president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. He has authored many books about dreams. He's been published in Time Magazine, Psychology Today, and the Huffington Post. And today we discuss his latest upcoming book, Lucretia the Dreamer, a woman in the 16th century in Spain who was experiencing many psychic dreams about the wars and royalty of her time. I hope you'll join us. It's a fascinating book.
Make that.
Well, it's very nice to meet you, and I'm really honored to have you join my podcast today. And I know your book is not coming out for a little while, but it was so cool to get a look at it early. And I had never heard of the story of Lucretia and her dreams from the 1500s, and it was really fascinating. And so I wanted to hear about how you got interested in this story.
Yeah, well, happy to, and I'm curious too to hear about some of your interests in this general realm. It sounds like you've done a lot of reflection and study and exploration of your own. So, yeah, and part of my interest in the story of Lucretia, this 16th century young Spanish woman, was that she had dreaming capacities that I think are potential in all of us. And this is just a really interesting historical, very juicy historical case. But it's, as I say, it's more than just a curiosity of the past. I think it helps us reflect on what are we all potentially capable of. So, yeah. And no one had really dug into it, There's so much there, and it had not been very well studied. I hadn't heard of it until just a few years ago myself. So, yeah.
I was really struck by the consistency of the nature of her dreams in terms of that they were populated with a set group of what appeared to be guides.
Yeah.
And that they regularly appeared in her dreams with messages that they were basically manipulating her to share them with the world despite the dangers that lay ahead for her.
It's right. So that's a very important part of it that I think also has contemporary resonance, which is that these capacities are latent, I think, within all of us to some degree. They also are potentially threatening to the status quo, almost by definition. We can talk about this, but my sense of dreaming is it's about sort of the imagination of what's possible and sort of looking beyond what is to imagine what might be. And so anybody who's really invested in the status quo and kind of the way things are, they're going to be uncomfortable with dreams at a minimum, and maybe violently opposed to them, as in Lucretia's case. So that's another. It's an inspiring tale, but it's also a cautionary tale. Just like, be smart, be aware, recognize the potential power that comes with that kind of dreaming. Yeah.
Right. And so she was specifically dreaming about the politics of her time and her location. And so they were, they were not personal dreams, really. I mean, they were political dreams.
Yeah, well, we don't know. So the dreams were recorded by people who came to her house each day to see what she had dreamed. There was some people got interested in the possible prophetic significance of the dreams, and so there was undoubtedly some kind of reporting bias. I would imagine. I mean, we only have what we have, but
right.
But you could imagine pretty easily, I think, she may have had some dreams that were about, her little siblings bugging her, or her father being a jerk or something like that, that the priest record, maybe she wouldn't want to share those, or the priest recording them wouldn't be interested in those. So they really were, but she was in her dreams deeply immersed in the political and religious and geostrategic things going on in her own personal world. It wasn't like us. I don't know if you live in the middle of Washington, D.C., but it would be like if she was living like 3 blocks from the White House kind of thing. Like she was that centrally located. So.
Right. That's intense.
No, it wasn't.
Really intense.
It's almost a perfect storm is the wrong way to put it, but just sort of conceptually, like if you could kind of take all the ingredients that would produce a really powerful expression of prophetic dreaming, this really has it all. It's really it's a remarkable story in that regard. So
yeah. How did you first come upon this story? I mean, I know it's been around forever, but I had never heard of it until this.
Yeah. So Robert Kagan, a historian at Johns Hopkins University, wrote a book in the early 1990s, I think it was, maybe in the late 80s. So a while ago, there was a very historical book about Lucretia, but it barely presented any of the actual dreams, and it was in the sort of historical, like medieval Spanish history discipline. So it was hard to kind of get at what I felt were the really interesting dreams through that text. So I just knew it was out there, and then there's another book that came out that translated some of the dreams, and I actually got to read them, and like, wow, these are intense dreams. Robert Moss, I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Moss's work.
Yes.
So someone I've known for a long time. In his book, The Secret History of Dreaming, there's a chapter on Lucretia that sort of explored in a very brief chapter. It's a short text, but he explored from more dream research kind of perspective what these dreams might be about. And so I just was waiting for the right time in life to get at it, and circumstances arose that I had a good offer from a publisher to write something I was interested in. I said, this is what I want to write about, and so here we go. So
cool.
Yeah. So it's by far the most fun thing I've written in ages and ever, probably. I mean, it's been a real fun journey, even though it's like dark and sad and tragic in all sorts of ways. So
right. There were some interesting elements of some of her dreams, I felt, that had some more symbols in them that they were able to, or whether the word is able, or they chose to ascribe meaning to, in terms of, like where there was a horse with hay in his mouth, and so what does that mean? And it was interesting to see, if you want to, can you share a little bit about those type of elements in some of her dreams?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes along with what you pointed out about the recurrent characters that appeared in her dreams that were, she called them the 3 companions, and they were 3 figures that in some combination appeared in most of the dreams that she reported, which is an unusual feature. I've rarely seen anybody with dreams with that many recurrent characters. So, and then some of the symbols, like you point out, the horse and the palms and different kinds of birds and lions and such. And the key thing there, and I spend a fair amount of time with this in the book, is understanding her lived context, the world in which she grew up. And that world was like more intensely Catholic than I think anything we can imagine living here in the contemporary US at least. She lived and breathed Catholicism. The king, Philip II, took enormous pride in being the defender of the faith. The Spanish Inquisition was at its height. She was Catholic through and through. So everything in her dreams emerged out of that soil, at least, out of that symbolic sort of ecosystem. Doesn't mean that, in my view, I think in several places she did kind of reach beyond that, like recognize that, hey, that's one way of looking at things, but my dreams are kind of opening up some different possibilities. That was a scary thing, of course. That's exactly what the Inquisition was, chasing after her about. But so the various symbols, she just said, I'm dreaming, and if you all want to write them down and do things with them and talk about them, fine. And so we don't really know what she herself thought about these dreams. We know that in the symbolic vernacular of that time, what Catholics at that time were thinking, her dreams were right in the thick of kind of apocalyptic literature generally. That the very symbols that are in there, like I said, the birds, the lions, the fire, the rivers of blood,
Right. It was
some really violent,
graphic,
shocking imagery that was familiar to the people of her time. People hearing those dreams would have been, oh yeah, that's like, so-and-so's gospel or so-and-so's prophecy. Like that was part of the what Catholics were talking about at that time in terms of the symbolism and the dynamics. So it wasn't, in some ways, the contents of her dreams weren't so dramatically unusual. It was that they were coming from this young, uneducated woman, like in her dreams, things that were as clearly symbolic and profound as the greatest prophecies in the Catholic tradition. That's kind of what was freaking out the Inquisition and the king and all of them. Yeah.
Right. That must have been such an interesting time.
Yeah.
Like in the danger of what you believe and what you don't believe, that you were really not allowed to have certain beliefs, or you could face death. And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Well, and right. And but combined with, I mean, this is what I found when I really started looking into it, is that it's not that she was just that she was living in that kind of intense culture. She lived kind of at the very pinnacle moment of Spanish Catholic greatness. And so kind of from her birth up to about the time when she was having her dreams, Spain was the greatest empire in the world. They ruled, they discovered the Americas, gold and silver and slaves and continents to rule and pagans to convert to the holy faith. Spain was like it seemed to be working. Like being hyper Catholic seemed to be working, and then it didn't. And her dreams anticipated that. And it was an unwelcome, like that's when I really got into it. It's not just that she was having dreams that anticipated what was coming. It's that what she was anticipating was not what anybody else in her society wanted to happen, or, that was not the official line. Put it that way. That was not the official line. And she as I understand, it was kind of tuning into the gathering storm clouds that did in fact sweep down on the country. So yeah, which is why in some ways it's such an interesting case study, because like I said, like the ingredients were there, like this amazing historical rise and fall that she was right in the very center of. So she had a great dreaming angle on all this stuff going on.
Right. Well, it was so interesting how she herself was not even able to write the dreams down, and had to have these other people come and write them for her. And then it seemed like they were sort of taking advantage of that in their own social circles for esteem or whatever purpose, or maybe just, entertainment, because
that
it
too
must have been highly entertaining to wonder how these dreams came to her. And
well, that, and I mean, so she it would not have been a smart thing to keep a private dream journal at that time. That would not have been a wise practice, because there you are documenting the possibility, one of the ways which the church thought that demons and the devil got into people's lives. So generally speaking, people, they would talk about them. And Lucretia was someone who, as an active dreamer, was known for sharing her dreams, as I think as a vivid dreamers do. I don't know how many vivid dreamers you've known, particularly in childhood, but they love talking about their dreams. They're right from the start. But writing them down was a different thing, and it was only, she was not educated, so didn't know how to write herself. And so it was only because these priests got involved that and kind of set it up within the context of confession, right? So when she was, when a priest would come over, scroll and quill in hand, and she started telling her dream, that was confession. The priest was her confessor. She was so. The reason that was important was they wanted this to be as above board and unthreatening or anything as possible. And under that pretext, she felt safe enough to go ahead and share her dreams. It turned out to be a big mistake. As you say, the priests then went on and did various things. They were opposed to the king. Her dreams were very critical of the king, so they kind of used her dreams as propaganda, we would say. And the entertainment value probably came from like I said, the novelty of the source, an uneducated young woman who, this might have been an additional factor, was apparently attractive, charismatic, and probably, if you got her talking about her dreams, was interesting to listen to, right? So, which again, in like a hyper Catholic, like uber strict sexual morality kind of situation, would create sparks of their own. So so it was it's amazing it happened at all. In some ways, she would have probably she hopefully would have had a long and prosperous and happy life if she hadn't gotten tangled up with what happened. But at the same time, once she was in it, she did feel, and this is my projection based on trying to really make sense of what happened in her behavior and what was going on. Mm-hmm. My sense is that there were several off-ramps that she could have taken at various points once it became clear that it wasn't going to be uncontroversial. And she kept going. And
do you think partly that may have been, so since the regularity of these guides that that were visiting her dreams, that maybe she had, developed some kind of connection, relationship with them, and their instructions that they displayed unhappiness that she wasn't sharing them as frequently or as they had expressed that she should be.
No, her three guides were kind of bossy. They definitely had a clear sense of her mission, and she seemed to trust that inner guidance. And this is what I'm saying. She could have found a graceful way to kind of detach from the process, I think, short of what ended up happening. And she didn't. And it was there was this inner sense of responsibility, a sense that she did have a gift of sorts that was, showing what was going to happen to her country, and it was her country, and she loved it. Like she thought the king was failing, but she I don't think she ever questioned her attachment to her country and her people. So she sacrificed herself in a way because she felt like this was important.
Now, thinking about that whole arc of that whole storyline that happened to her, and do you think that there was any opportunity for her visions to make an impact on any of the people responsible for where things were going in Spain? I mean, was it just inconsequential that her dreams and that she was just in the end just sort of just a victim for sharing what was potentially going to happen, where there was no real opportunity for it to make a difference at that point in time? It didn't seem like, at least I didn't pick up on anything that it seemed to indicate, any messages that other people should be trying to have these dreams, or, what really was the purpose if, for her to be sharing such dangerous information.
And that remains something of a mystery. She, again, it was just a kind of random sequence of events that got it going to begin with. It would have been much more likely if no one had ever heard of her, no one had ever talked. Like the fact that it all happened is really kind of extraordinary, just in terms of the coincidences that all kind of came together. Right. So it's hard to see a specific purpose or.
So maybe even it wasn't even necessarily meant for her time period for the impact to be there, but now that it's her story has carried on, that maybe now at some point down the road there will be a place where it resonates in a bigger way of look, people have for centuries have been having dreams that come true, and it hasn't always been pretty for the ones who share them.
Well, I mean, the thing is, she got as close as anybody could get to making the change. I mean, the king himself knew about her and her dreams. So, and the king was the decider. He, so the information had reached him.
Right.
And then he decided to disregard it. So in a way, again, it's sort of like the perfect test case, because it reached the top level in time, and it was disregarded because the tunnel vision and the rigidity of self, I mean, this is the thing.
Right.
I think the king was a bum. I think it would have been a graceful opportunity for him. His people would have, if he'd said, you know what, I've been planning this armada for 7 or 8 years, however long, and put a lot of thought into it. But you know what? I listened to the signs of God, and this young but pious woman has whatever I mean, there it is. Like, if he wanted a nice way to change the plans that ultimately proved ruinous to his reign, he had it. So yeah, but having said that, it didn't work. They squashed her, her, they did a lot to uh, uh, sort of make her disappear and make her story disappear. So they definitely were uncomfortable with it as a whole. So I think of what you're getting at, like, I do feel a sense like, yes, bringing out her story now does kind of carry out some of the purpose or the energies that were emerging in her dreams that maybe were before their time, or still have resonance beyond their time. I don't know. I'm curious what you make of it, because I know you've got you know a lot about sort of.
Well, I think it's, for one thing, it's fascinating that, with all of that stuff that she was imprisoned and tortured or whatever, that the writings of her dreams even survived.
Yeah.
that is a miracle.
Yeah.
But well, gosh, I've kept dream journals for a lot of years, and at one point in life, there was like a solid 8-year period where I was very, very consistent with them. During a very, it started out at a challenging point in my life, and where I basically had a religious figure come in my dreams and give me instructions and scold me that I hadn't been writing it down, and I was reminded very sternly to write it down. And so that sparked a solid 8 years of dream journaling, and basically the first dream that I wrote down came true, and then and there's just many more happened, and even today they still continue, but not as frequently as they were. There was a time where I was having a precognitive dream at least once 4 times a month, so once a week, yeah. And
Yeah.
But even though I was recording dreams practically every day, so when I got around to writing my book 2 years ago, I had over 2,000 pages of dream recordings to sort through, and I was pulling all the ones out that had happened and put those in a separate binder. And so now I've got this big binder that I keep adding to. But really I haven't, up until now, I keep telling people I'm really late to this party of getting in touch with other, dream researchers and that. So I sort of have this, I get a little excited about it. But yeah, I mean, I can, obviously, like I mentioned to you that, we're not being imprisoned anymore or tortured, but there certainly still is an element of, people, I've experienced being shunned by my own family over this. They cannot relate to it. They don't want to talk about it. I'm strange. And, so there are a lot of dream workers out there who sort of tried to, pat down the ones who are excited about psychic dreaming, but in my experience, it just isn't socially acceptable in a wide enough range yet. And so it's really disappointing, because you feel like, well, that is holding back progress on what we can learn about how it happens. And after, I mean, and even though I had, years worth of dreams that came true. It really wasn't until 2 years ago when I made the discovery that I had dreamed 17, 18 years out that came true, with including a quote of something that was said and a drawing of a feature of a location that they were both at, and with a witness. And that was like 17 years. Holy cow. That
Yeah.
is not happening in my brain.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people are talking about that. When I read, dream research and everything, majority seem to focus on brain activity. And no, there's a lot more going on in my experience than just the brain. And so that's partly why, it has to do, and I know that you've written a little bit about, when we have visitations in our dreams. And so that experience is when, you're meeting with someone who has passed on. You are meeting with their soul on some plane, some, plane other than our physical plane. And so in that space, we are also in that same existence with them. And so, okay, so what's going on there? That is
and this is why I find dreams so fascinating, because there is this brain-based dimension to them, but they open us to aspects and dimensions of experience that current brain science just can't explain. And so the challenge there is to be okay with exploring realms that current science just isn't technologically or methodologically or conceptually capable of really making sense. But and this has always been my sort of working principle, is the limits of science can never be the limits of what we explore, or what's scientifically known, or what's sort of scientifically verifiable, because that's always moving. And so here's an example, a story that made a big influence on me years back, and in some ways was kind of the seeds for the Lucretia book. I was teaching a class to some undergraduates. It was a class on dreams, I'm pretty sure. And early in the class, a young woman came up to me and said that when she was 12 or 13 years old, like as a child and up to about that point, she had dreams that seemed to anticipate the future, that seemed to connect with things that later happened. And one night she had a dream that her mother had a dress in the backseat of their car and was driving somewhere and got in a car accident, and not a bad one, but an accident. And the next day it happened. Her mother was driving somewhere with the girl's prom dress, I think it was, and got in an accident. And the girl said to her mother right after, it's like, "Mom, this is amazing. I had a dream of just what happened." And her mother said, "Daughter, I don't ever want to hear a dream like that again. I'm not going to raise a witch in this household." And it was a pretty conservative Christian family and background. And the young woman said that she felt something like kind of shut off after that, and she never had a dream like that again. And she kind of knew what had happened, and yet there was like the time had kind of passed, and it was, once it's gone in that case anyway. Maybe I don't know what happened later in her life, but
I doubt that. I just think personally, I feel
but to your point, it does.
You go through a period where, and I shut down myself for many years. So I think it's just a matter of giving yourself permission and being, mentally say, okay, but I mean, I don't know, that one just happened, randomly, as they think they do initially. My first one that came true, I was 15, and it happened 24 hours later. And so it really got my attention, and that sort of sparked my, keep writing my dreams down in my diary at that early age. But
Yeah.
um, I've had friends who have told me that I never remember my dreams, but then after spending some time talking with me about, my dream experience and reading my book, then literally a week later they went home and they remembered a dream, and it was precognitive. So just,
Yeah.
it somehow just sometimes takes getting your consciousness in that zone, and whatever
Yeah.
caused her to um, have that. Well, obviously a car accident is a pretty strong energetic thing to happen, and if she's close to her mother, especially in the teen years, mothers and
Yeah.
daughters, I think, can have a more powerful connection based,
Yeah.
on
Do you,
hormonal
do
stuff.
you, do you find that there's
Yeah, I
a
certainly had that with
family
my mom.
dynamic that comes out?
We had some very strange experiences psychically when I was a teenager, um, and we didn't know what to make of it. Some of them, just that's the only time it happened.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they sound out there, but it's just,
But they happen. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
part of what may have been going on with Lucretia was she took the king symbolically, or related to him as her father in a way. Like there's a strong kind of father-child dynamic going on there, at least in her own, I think, imagining. So yeah, that's
uh-huh.
I'm interested in that. And do you find that it's also not always associated with life-threatening stress, but that
Right.
those
I mean,
can
it
be
could be very
triggers?
mundane things too,
Yeah.
but it's just been, yeah, one of the frustrating things for me personally going through my dreams and the ones that came true. Oftentimes, I mean, they were so far in advance that I had no clue,
Right.
until years after the event happened, that I had even dreamed it. And so, some of them, you wonder, well, why? Because it didn't
Yeah.
happen in a time frame where I would have, it would have been able to help me avoid a situation or
Right.
something. But it was more evidential. And I've felt like my that has been sort of my focus, and I think it was partially involved with that. I was married to an atheist for many years who didn't believe in psychic phenomenon, and he thought I was crazy, and it was a real challenge while we were married. I mean, he didn't think that he would be able to stay married to me if I still believed that. I mean, so I was having my own persecution
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
and so I was actually went on a mission despite his threat, to try to prove to him that
yeah.
there's more to reality than he thought. And so I think that sort of set me up for having more dreams that came true that were basically evidential, but
Yeah,
wouldn't necessarily help anybody out with, you know.
well, helping you out. I mean, it's
Yes,
the place to
it
start.
would have, but the timing of them just wasn't
Yeah,
lined up well enough to
yeah,
make a difference there. So,
yeah. Well, it
um,
is. I mean, and this is why I think it's challenging to draw generalizations out of these experiences because they're so um, closely entwined with our lives, with people's lives. So um, and in a way, why should it be otherwise? I mean, this is powerful. These are very subtle and powerful aspects of how the mind works and what we tune into. Um, and so, I don't know. I don't think we should put too much pressure on ourselves if we don't immediately get it, because this is at the very, very edge of what anybody thinks is possible, really. I mean, and I'm very comfortable. I don't understand why so many researchers feel like they have to put big firm boundaries around the further potentials of the human mind. It just seems like you're just setting yourself up to look foolish in the future when we figure these things out and we make more sense of things. It's not that we should be gullible and just believe anything just because it sounds good. And it sounds like, someone like yourself, like,
Right.
hey, you're putting together like a lot of information, a lot of data to help us kind of understand what these experiences look like and how they emerge in people's lives. And to me, that is science. I mean, trying to understand it, and maybe we can. I was just talking with good friend Bill Domhoff, who teaches psychology at UC Santa Cruz. He's emeritus, and he's as hardcore about the scientific method as applied to dreaming as you could possibly be. He wouldn't like this conversation at all. But even he will say, look, we can do really good dream science, even though we can't do sort of controlled experimental tests in the laboratory of the kind that other sciences can. That's just not it's not what dreaming's about. So anyway, that's just a way of saying that I just think we're so much at the beginning of understanding what the dreaming mind is capable of and what it opens up for us, and how it connects us to dimensions of reality that we different cultures, I think, have intuited and talked about in myths and legends and sacred texts over time, but is still all quite mysterious. And so that's I don't know, that to me that makes it fun.
I know, and I've been reading more recently since I've having podcast guests on with this topic, and so obviously I have a lot to catch up on, but I've come across where they've made 5 categories of dreams, or they try to make these labels of small quantities of it's either this, or this, and
Right.
I'm just sitting there going, what?
Yeah.
And so a dream can either be precognitive, or if it's not, then it's statistical, I'm like, it can be both.
It's
because their dreams are multi-dimensional, and so I'm having a hard time with these labels that I'm.
Well, I'm sorry to say it's a function in many ways of kind of the modern research world that people make progress in their careers by becoming more and more specialized. And so there's this kind of, strong force to burrow ever more deeply into one's own discipline, as opposed to what I think the phenomenon of dreaming requires, and what you're kind of sensing, I think, in articulating, is a need for an interdisciplinary approach that draws on many different angles on dreaming, because the phenomenon is so complex. So it's very easy to break dreams down into little bits. It's much harder to create kind of a 360-degree vision of all the things that are going on, from the physical to the spiritual, to, everything in between, the political, the personal, all of that. So this is something when I do dream sharing groups, it's usually, there's never an end to exploring a dream. There's just sort of, you run out of time. up and go do something else. But every dream, even Freud, Sigmund Freud has this great footnote in his book, The Interpretation of Dreams, where he says every dream has what he called a navel, like a belly button, which he called a point of contact with the unknown. I think it was a beautiful image of how every dream, even a very mundane dream, a trivial dream, is coming from deeper sources, and in a kind of, I don't know, fractal-like way, like the microcosm does include and encompass macrocosmic themes and energies. So
Right.
yeah, I think all dreams have a precious quality, and I like you, I struggle with theories that stick them in little boxes and treat them as people who take one of those types of dreams and say, here's the evidence for my theory of dreams, and this is what all dreams are like. It's like, whoa, no.
That's
there are
right.
a lot of kinds. There are many dreams, many types of dreams. So, and they all overlap. So, again, it's what makes it fun. If you like exploring those connections, it makes it frustrating for those who want to, narrow in and specialize. That's just,
Right. Well, I saw that you're presenting at the Association for Study of Dreams next month, and you'll be talking about a 32-year dream journal.
yeah.
Is that correct? So I'm going to be curious about.
Yeah, are you going to be at the conference?
I'm going. Yes.
Oh, yay! Great.
It's my first time.
Oh, excellent. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's going to be part of a presentation on exploring long-term dream journals. Kind of what I've been working on in recent years. And one of the journals I'll be talking about is a woman who, for 32 years, in fact, two of them are 30-year. I'm talking about 4 journals.
Oh, wow.
4 people's journals, and 2 of them are 30 years in length. And what I'm trying to do is use some of the tools for breaking dreams down into just itty-bitty little bits, and then bringing them back in ways that help us understand what's going on for the dreamer. So it's experimental, and I'm still not sure I trust it entirely myself.
Yeah.
But I've been pursuing it because I'm convinced that this is where the research world is moving. The technologies are there, and I'm concerned that if dream researchers don't figure out how to use these tools in appropriate interdisciplinary kinds of ways, other people are going to develop them in ways that aren't interdisciplinary and are less than helpful. And that'll create even more problems. So I'm trying to find, with the help of various people, a way to kind of draw upon sort of data analysis technologies to boost dream journaling exploration, not to replace intuition and reflection, but to help us along. So we'll see. We'll see. That's the goal. We'll see. Like I said, the jury is still out whether where it works, where it doesn't work. But like I said, I'm trying to figure it out.
So what are you hoping that it will illustrate or shine a light on?
Yeah. Well, I think if nothing else, excuse me, it's a way of simplifying some of the things that we like to know about our dreams. So, for example, how often in a big set of dreams do people dream of animals or of family characters, or do they mention words relating to flying or falling? These are things that, some things don't lend themselves to that kind of analysis, but some things do pretty easily. And having that information in mind kind of gets the process started, gives you something to work with. And what I've been finding is that when we get a sense of kind of some of these general patterns in dreaming, that it makes it easier to identify unusual dream phenomena. And which is really what, I mean, my whole interest in dreams is really about the unusual, the intensified dreams, what Carl Jung called big dreams. And I've come to believe that one of the best ways to explore those kinds of dreams is to understand what makes them different from kind of ordinary general patterns of dreaming. So the best way to understand what's extraordinary is to understand what's ordinary. So one of the people I'm going to talk about, well, I guess, yeah, the 32 years of journaling, as I recall, she had a lot of references to death, like a really, really high number of references to death in her dreams. And that turned out to be a very accurate reflection of some of the stuff she's had to deal with in her life. That you would have figured that out pretty quickly reading through the dreams, but just click, 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 boom, there you see it. And it's like, whoa, that's a really unusual feature of her dream life that right away gives me a sense that this is a factor in her life. So yeah, playing around with those kinds of correlations, and one of the dreamers is going to be there at the session. One of the people whose journals I'm
Oh, cool.
So yeah, cool and nerve-wracking, you know.
I know, sharing your personal dreams with them.
Well, yeah, and she's going to be talking about them, and it'll be I think a fascinating session. I'm so pumped up about it. But it'll also be a way of seeing where these kinds of tools are and are not helpful. So yeah, no, it'll be fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, now, when does your book about Lucretia come out?
Yeah, it comes out in February.
February, okay. Is there a cover for it yet?
Yeah, you know, they're gonna put it out with a catalog. I could send you something. Yeah, I'm happy with the cover.
I'd love, if there's a cover, I'd love to put it with this recording for you.
Yeah.
But so what do you have anything else coming up after the conference that
yeah, well, one thing I'd mention is this is see that's
oh yes, Big
Dreams. Came out last year, Big Dreams, and there's a chapter in there on prophetic dreaming, on precognition in dreaming, that's kind of the seeds of the research that I used in the Lucretia book. So that actually kind of a continuation of that. Yeah, and then the other thing I'm giving right after the ISD conference, I'm giving a talk at the Chautauqua Institution in New York on June 26th, and they've asked me to talk about dreams and primal religion.
Wow!
So I'm going to talk. I'm developing a kind of general theory about dreaming, which the Big Dreams book lays out in part, about dreaming as a kind of play, and in play in the evolutionary sense of a certain kind of behavior that particularly the young members of an animal species engage in for various reasons. In my view, dreaming is an extension of the play instinct into sleep and the space that sleep creates. So, and where that goes with religion and creativity and art and such is what the lecture is going to be about. So.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah, we'll see. That's what I got to work on between now and then.
Where can people learn more about you?
I've got a
website.
website. So I manage two websites. One, kellybulkeley.org, and that's just personal blogs and commentaries on this and that. I just put up a whole bunch of video links to songs and movie trailers and lectures and such about dreams. So that's fun. And then I manage the Sleep and Dream database, which is sleepandreamdatabase.org, all one word. And that's an online archive and search engine that has 30 some odd thousand dreams now, and a lot of survey data as well. So you can explore dreams in various ways. You can look at women's dreams, children's dreams,
wow,
Russian people's dreams, dreams of cats, or like all.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really fun.
That's cool.
It's a little obscure because I'm still trying to.
Is there a precognitive section?
Say it again.
Is there a precognitive section?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there is. So one of the surveys I did asked a question: have you ever had a dream that anticipated the future, something like that? And some people answered, and they said, and they gave some reports. And this is the thing. There's like a bazillion. Like, I've been gathering data and trying to create the infrastructure to kind of work with it, leaving like these just little treasure chests of data all over that I know when I get the time will be really fun.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
So yeah, I'll send you a link to that. To be honest, cool. I think there is some data in there on that. So yeah, it's got all sorts of stuff. It's my playground and my gift to dreamers and dream researchers going forward. It's free and open access, and
wow,
a lot of students have been using it for various purposes. So yeah.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. I was talking to Lloyd Auerbach recently, and I asked him if there was anything like that online, and he wasn't sure. So I'm
working on it. Yeah,
you've got something going. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I think we probably need to wrap it up before we hit the hour mark here. But I'm so looking forward to meeting you in person next month at the event. And I'm really enjoying your Lucretia book. It's so amazing. And I was trying to look online. Has anyone made a movie of this yet? But it looked like there was a TV show or something. But wow, it should be one.
That's my next project.
It should be. It's
well, to be honest, I was finishing the Big Dreams book, and I thought, gosh, I'm done with writing intense university press books for a little while. I'm going to write a screenplay about Lucretia. Why not? And then a publisher came along and said, do you want to write something? Like I said, and so that's what I did. But
I see.
So yes, that is in my mind. And I want to thank you for doing this. This is great public education, putting it out there and sharing your story and talking with other people who can, help people figure these things out. Spread the word
so we don't have so much stigma. I mean, it's not just about psychic dreams. Dreams in general are fascinating, and they are worth the time to try to understand them. It's not totally possible to completely understand them yet, but it's another part of who we are. It's another part of our nature, and if we're not taking a look at it, we're not even trying to understand more of who we are and what our potential is. And
exactly.
So anyway, it's I'm on a mission.
Good. Good. I'm glad to be part of the process.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll see you next month.
All right. Yeah, looking forward to it. So
yes.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you.
For information about Kim's book, Sleeping with Spirit, A Journey with Psychic Dreams, visit psychicdreamjourney.com.